also started watching The Sandman this week, which there's a little bit of tie-in with today's episode on The Sandman. Did you pick up on that?
I liked The Sandman. I've always liked The Sandman. I read the comics, graphic novels, however. I ingested them as like omnibus graphic novels in high school, but I thought The Sandman was excellent.
I enjoyed it. It has strange tonal shifts, I would say. One thing I do like about it is that some of the episodes are almost like standalone Twilight Zone episodes, kind of.
And that's like pretty true with the comic series as well. Like, you know, you kind of get different glimpses and different themes episode by episode, or issue by issue, I should say. But also episode by episode in the Netflix adaptation.
I have not read the comic, but one thing that I just couldn't help but notice, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but I just don't know that it was representative of the real population of people in London or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Every guy in that show fucks other dudes. Almost every one of them.
And keep in mind, like, when I read these was over a decade ago. Edging on 2 decades now. No, but there is pretty wide representation in the original body of works, in my humble opinion. You know, this isn't something that needed like a major, you know, character redesign, plot redesign to like, you know, hit whatever Netflix metrics they gotta have to get greenlit.
To be clear, like when they do like redesign characters to, you know, add representation, I generally support that, like, as a thing. It doesn't bother me unless it's like really kind of shoehorned in.
Sure. I'm gonna wear the hate sponge hat now. I will shift the blame away from you and onto me to return to being the show's preferred bald villain.
Good.
Yeah. The new Lord of the Rings show, The Rings of Power, that's coming out.
Is that out?
It's not out yet. It comes out September 2nd, which is actually the day that J.R.R. Tolkien died, which is a little fucked up.
Interesting.
But anyways, I don't care, right? Like, you know, cast whoever you're going to fucking cast. But, like, casting dwarves as black people makes zero sense because dwarves are a race that literally spends years at a time underground. Like, why would they evolve melanated skin? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And I'm sorry, like this will be the end of the show. This is like I've crossed the line. Fucking Jeff Bezos is gonna come and personally exsanguinate me, and absorb my blood into his live stream. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like you could have made any number of other characters black, but like the dwarves, it just doesn't make sense from like a scientific evolutionary standpoint. And I understand this is high fantasy, none of that matters. There's dragons, there's rings that make you invisible, you know, I like whatever, I get it, but like I'm just saying I would have gone with black elves. That's what I would have done.
I get it.
Black dwarves just doesn't make any sense in my mind.
I love that oh man, we're just really digging ourselves.
Dude, fucking right do it. Now, let's hear it. Dude, fuck it. This will be the episode that ends it all. Then we're free. We get canceled and deplatformed. We don't have to do this anymore. We're done with it. We can have normal lives and hobbies and friends and like playing rec leagues.
I really don't. It does not bother me. I think, you know, yes, we need more representation in the films. It doesn't. Sure. That's fine.
Agreed. Anyways, true. Flickers, we are way off the rails. We are 12 minutes into this. Welcome back to Far Out Flicks. It is your host, Andrew. Joining me in his soon-to-be deplatformed seat is...
I am Braden.
Yeah. now you hesitate with your name. You know, 42 episodes into this or whatever.
Try to find me. Try to find me, listener.
Dude, it's probably not that hard. Don't invite it.
Don't try to find me.
But do let us know. If you are outraged by our comments, send us an email at faroutflixpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, engage with our Facebook platform. Help our algorithm.
I think like maybe bad press is better than no press. So yeah, if you want to As long as you don't like report us and get us fucking shadow banned again, I swear if we get shadow banned one more time.
I mean, the cat's butthole meme. I think maybe that will have been.
All I'm saying is we didn't make that image, you know, like, and nor did some, you know, crusty meme lord living in a basement. That was made by the people who filmed and produced that movie, or really did the CGI for it, because I think it was a CGI effect. You know, they didn't they didn't have buttholes as part of the costume. It was added later and subtracted when it didn't test well with audiences.
I mean, I still want to see it. It would test well with me, if you know what I'm saying.
I'm sure.
I'd watch Jennifer Lawrence's butthole or whoever's in that stupid movie.
I'm pretty sure it's not Jennifer Lawrence. All right, here's a guilty confession. I've never seen Cats in any form. I like a good musical every once in a while. I haven't seen a good musical in a very long time.
The Book of Mormon, you shared some of those
The
songs
Book of Mormon
with
was
me.
sweet, but I also saw that like almost a decade ago. So
It's been a while.
it's been a while.
Since I said I'm sorry.
I hate that song so much.
Anyway, folks, this week we are finally doing The Island of Dr. Moreau.
You say that like this has been like an in-demand episode. The people have been beating down the castle door.
I have been
for
demanding
Island,
this
the Isle of
episode.
Dr. Moreau.
I have been demanding this episode. Forced Andrew to watch it.
He did, and
I
it was
called him in
forced.
the middle of it. He was like, He sounded so depressed. He was like, "I'm watching it. It's really bad."
Yeah, so this is one of those very rare movies where I'm going to say up front, I don't think it's a good movie. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to have fun talking about it, but I am not putting this on my, like, Andrew's must-watch list. So,
This was a Braden pick. And I will also say...
are you putting this on your must-watch, or your must-watch list? Are you?
I'm just saying I'm a huge Marlon Brando fan.
I know.
Huge.
Yeah.
Love Marlon Brando. That character... All of the parts that stand out of this movie came directly from the mind of Marlon Brando. They were changes he made to the script, and everyone thought he was insane. They thought he was nuts, and then those end up being like the most iconic parts of the movie. It's been parodied a million times over. Even the Tropic Thunder parodies this film. South Park, The Doctor and His Mini-Me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is true. That is
Austin
true.
Powers, Dr. Evil and His Mini-Me.
Yes, but it's almost like they're like, it's like a mean punching down parody, in my humble opinion. But I will say, I don't dislike Marlon Brando in this
Look
at
at
all.
you on your high horse.
I don't dislike Marlon Brando at all in this, and I agree with everything you're saying. I just think it's
He's
like
the best
not,
part.
it's not that good of a movie. It
it's
would have been
terrible.
better if Richard Stanley was able to make it.
Agree. I do agree. I think it would have been wildly different. Again, if Richard Stanley had been able to make it, it would have been a $5 million budget, and they wouldn't have been even able to get Marlon Brando, probably.
Except he was billed for it originally, right? So like, Richard
I
Stanley
mean,
did have him lined up.
That wasn't his first choice.
Okay, but like New Line put Marlon Brando in.
Correct, which also bumped up the budget to like 35 million, and then that's when Richard Stanley like essentially lost control of his own film.
I mean, there's some other factors weighing in there, like, you know,
We're
a
gonna get
natural
to it.
disaster and
There
Val
was
Kilmer's, you know,
being insane.
apparently in his documentary, Val, he pitches his side of the Isle of Dr. Moreau's story.
Have you watched that?
No, because I like don't care that much about Val Kilmer, but you know,
I kind of like him after he was on the Cho show, David Cho.
I've always kind of liked Val Kilmer. I just like don't know if I'm going to watch a documentary about a living celebrity.
I just hate the Doors movie so much.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I do not, and I love the Doors. I do not like that movie at all. And like, I kind of that was probably, that was some of my first Val Kilmer exposure was that film.
Yeah, I think for me it was probably whatever Batman he's in, but
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe Top Gun,
In
maybe
this movie,
Tombstone. Actually, I don't know.
okay, yeah. I mean, the Batman was early on for me, and this film came like right on the heels of Batman, the Val Kilmer Batman. So he was like at the height of his powers, and you know. But
People forget Val Kilmer got fat for a little bit.
Oh yeah,
He was thick Val.
Thick, 2 C's.
Also, is Val short for something? Do you know? Is it a real name?
That's a good question. Now I'm on Val Kilmer's Wikipedia page. He turned down a role in David Lynch's Blue Velvet.
Ooh,
He went to high
mistake.
school with Kevin Spacey. Yeah, also
Yeah.
possibly a mistake.
I don't know how much of that was his choice, but you know.
Kevin Spacey's coming back.
When do you think Kevin Spacey will come back?
Apparently, he had a movie. There were like some films that they tried to like take to the most recent film festivals, and were trying to shop around to distributors.
And were
I
they
mean,
like,
here's a question.
were they
I
summarily rejected at the door, or were they like,
I
yeah, of
don't-
course?
I don't know how it went over, but like, did Kevin Spacey was not convicted of any crimes, was he?
No, not one.
It sounds like okay. I might just be ignorant right now, but
Yeah, let's
it's,
hear it. Let's let's shift the blame
in
back
the sense
to you.
that I just don't actually know the extent of what he did, but it sounds like he was just really creepy towards young men.
I think
at
he
least
like he
most
definitely
of which-
fucked a couple minors. Is kind
Oh,
of what it
okay,
sounded like.
that's problematic.
He made a sexual advance towards him. So Anthony Rapp was the accuser. And he accused Spacey of making a sexual advance towards him in 1986 when Rapp was 14.
Oh, that's young.
However, there have been no charges brought against him.
That is quite young.
There were a bunch of other dudes who said that Spacey had sexually harassed them as well.
Well, that's really unfortunate. All right.
It doesn't say if the other dudes are underage, though. But either way.
All right. Well, yeah, I hope he doesn't come back, even though he was great in a few of his roles. He was always kind of a great, creepy guy in his most of his best roles.
I thought he was a fantastic actor, and it's, you know, I hate that he is a creep and that we can't enjoy his things anymore.
That's true. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, hell, he has had some new movies.
No, he's had a few new ones. He's coming back on his own. He might be, like, bankrolling them from start to finish.
I guess his most recent film was Billionaire Boys Club, which is...
That's not what,
Oh,
just
man.
not... I don't know if that's a good PR move.
I can't even remember when Kevin Spacey was accused. I think it was...
I wonder what the cost of admission is. You just have to, like, suck his dick.
I think he was accused in 2017 following Baby Driver, which is the last movie I can remember him in.
Also not a great title of a movie for a guy who's convicted of
Again,
sexual
not
assault
convicted,
of a minor.
but
Okay.
accused. Not
Baby
defending,
Driver.
but just so we get our terminology correct. Billionaire Boys Club. Wild.
That is very strange.
But yeah, the rest of his filmography and theater appearances are pretty dry. He post 2017. There are some to be announced ones. There's The Man Who Drew God, directed by Franco Nero, starring Nero, and then Peter 5'8".
Movies we will never see that will never see the light of day, probably.
I mean, maybe not.
I don't see Billionaire Boys Club on Netflix. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, Netflix doesn't have a lot of things. I actually think it's like the worst streaming platform. But
I think if you're rich enough, you can keep acting because He probably is like executive producer of those films as well.
I'm saying is Roman Polanski didn't stop making shit, man.
That's a good point.
In
That's
fact,
a
he's
good
like
point.
still winning awards, basically.
Neither
right?
did Woody Allen, and he like married his adopted daughter.
Yeah.
If that's not grooming, then I don't know what is.
Grooming wasn't even a word when that happened, like in that context at least. Yeah, fucking Polanski won Best Director at the fucking Caesar Awards in France in 2020.
I mean, they're all pedophiles. They give each other awards. I think it's
There are a lot of people who also defend Roman Polanski for whatever that's worth.
I don't know as much about him.
Not the hill I'm gonna die on, man.
No.
I do really love Chinatown though. Anyways, the movie we are doing today, God, we're so off the fucking rails, is
It's okay.
the Isle of Dr. Moreau. Going back, just to refresh your memories in case we lost you there, I don't like this movie. I think it's just okay. Braden likes it more. I don't
But
know.
you watched the documentary about it, right?
I did, and that makes it more interesting. But
It's a case of where the documentary about it is more interesting than the movie itself, for sure, 100%. If you have a choice between watching The Island of Dr. Moreau and watching the documentary, which is called Lost Soul: The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, watch Lost Soul. It's way more entertaining. And it's on YouTube.
well, there you go, free with some minor ads.
It was way better. But still, the actual film itself is a nice companion piece. And I think it's worth watching for Marlon Brando.
The film is a companion piece to the documentary about the making of the film. All right.
Correct. And Marlon Brando's role, and Nelson De La Rosa, who is the world's smallest man, who is also in this film. Them alone, they make this film unforgettable.
Yeah. Marlon Brando is super fond of that young man, correct?
Correct. We'll get into it, but Marlon Brando had no interest in like making a movie. But he was super interested in all of the extras. He went around and like met every single Beast person, became best friends with the world's smallest man.
He was also very tragically. The filming of this movie took place after his daughter's suicide. So there was a lot of doubts as to if he was even going to be involved with the project. And I think, like, coming out of an experience like that, like wanting to connect with like people and like, I don't know, like touch the earth a little bit, is like a very like normal and healthy thing to do. So I'm glad that like Marlon at least got that out of this. He also, as is revealed in the documentary, basically like thought the whole production was a shit show and was just like kind of being a king of his fucking castle there, like just doing whatever he wanted, which is, I also respect that. I think that's pretty cool too. But yes, very, very, very human side of Marlon Brando and the way he treated and responded to and engaged with the extras in this film.
Marlon Brando is a fascinating character. The rumor is that he had sex with Richard Pryor and just lived a fascinating kind of life in general. Like, and also, like, more importantly than that, that's just a fun little nugget. More importantly than that, he, like, kind of modernized acting in a way and is, like, credited with, like, revolutionizing the art itself and adding, like, a realism to it that wasn't there before.
Is this your favorite Marlon Brando movie?
I mean, it's widely considered to be his worst movie. but I'm not gonna say it's his worst. I mean, no, my favorite Marlon Brando movie is Apocalypse Now. But I do consider this to be one of his best roles. It just is. It's great. It's genius. And it all like came from his own creativity. None of it was in the script. He just wrote it on the fly, seemingly as an attempt to like actually sabotage the film itself by just coming up with the most absurd ideas and like seeing how much you could get away with. But
Indeed, but you were saying that those absurd attempts are the best parts of the movie for
they
you.
are the best parts of the movie, but they don't quite redeem all the parts, the scenes he's not in, right?
It it doesn't. I can think of a couple scenes he's not in that I really like. I like the animal mutant birth scene.
That's fun.
That's fun, and I think that's actually a Richard Stanley scene.
That's like one of the only. That's like the first thing they filmed.
It is, and that's like my favorite part of the whole movie.
Let's go way back. Let's kind of.
Yeah.
So, The Island of Dr. Moreau, published in 1896. It was a book by English author H.G. Wells, which I was a big fan of H.G. Wells. He was my first big sci-fi. Like, as a kid, I got a hold of, I want to say, The Time Machine and the War of Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
Extra article
and
in there.
that totally, like, broke open the science fiction for me. That's, like, what got me into it, actually.
Same. I remember reading War of the Worlds and I think something else of his, like in like an English textbook or whatever. I mean, I was already into sci-fi. I was a sci-fi nerd from the get-go, basically. But I do remember reading some H.G. Wells. I also remember the Time Machine movie, which there's like a soft spot in my heart for that film. You know, I don't think anybody's like, you know, petitioning for it to be put into the National Film Registry or whatever.
No,
but like,
it was not great.
it's fine. It's
even
fine.
as like a 11
Much as this film is fine, that film is fine as well.
Even as like an 11-year-old, I was like, this isn't as good as the book. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like,
Well, it's often the case.
the book was so good. I have to admit, I did not read this one though. I did not read The Island of Dr. Moreau.
If I did, I had forgotten about it.
Now I want to, but interestingly enough,
have I read it? Oh my gosh.
I have not.
Oh,
But
I've been alive too long.
But
Our
I was a
brains are
huge
failing.
H.G. Wells fan. Interestingly enough, a little tie-in between this and Apocalypse Now.
Other than Marlon Brando.
Other than Marlon Brando, it goes quite deep.
All right,
with
let's
the
hear the
roots
deep
here.
cut. The deep cut.
As we know from just common knowledge and our Apocalypse Now episode, Apocalypse Now, based off The Heart of Darkness, as the screenplay by John Milius.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And maybe a serial killer / colonist. But
H.G.
listen to the episode. You'll get that.
H.G. Wells was very, very good friends with Joseph Conrad, who was the author of Heart of Darkness. And when H.G. Wells published this in 1896, Joseph Conrad actually published The Heart of Darkness just a couple years later. And H.G. Wells accused him of ripping off The Island of Dr. Moreau. Because there are some
similarities for sure.
There's some similar themes. He said that Kurtz was clearly based off Dr. Moreau. Structural similarities, but interestingly, clearly the antagonists in both of the films are played by Marlon Brando. The character leaves society, kind of goes nuts or whatever.
Or playing it being a god.
Pretty much in both cases, right?
Yep.
In both cases, they're essentially worshipped as a god. Conrad actually defended his book and said that Kurtz was not based on Moreau, but actually the famous explorer of Africa named Sir Henry Morton Stanley. So this gets real weird. There's a lot of like weird synchronicities here.
And again, there are theories, accusations is a harsh word, that Joseph Conrad also based Kurtz off of basically this colonial, I don't know if he was a general, but like lieutenant or whatever, who went off the deep end at the same time that he would have been in the Congo. Captain Paul Voulet. And there's a whole documentary about it called African Apocalypse. And so when Paul Voulet was going on his very Kurtz-like rampage through Africa, specifically like part of the Congo, was during the time when Joseph Conrad was there.
Interesting.
So he would have like heard about this guy in the news, almost certainly. Paul Voulet was going crazy and chopping up people and stringing them from trees all up and down a river, more or less the same time that Joseph Conrad wrote Heart of Darkness.
Wow. Yeah, it's messed up.
We talk about that in the episode.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that Joseph Conrad attributed it to him, though.
No, but like, would you necessarily if you've got this
Oh, that's a
great
good
character
point.
that you've written that like
That's a good point. Well,
that
you
you more or
ruined
less
my
just ripped off of this psychopath?
you ruined my trivial nugget. But
Well, no, I mean, I think it's probably both. I think it's a mixture of
Sure.
Paul Voulet and whatever his name was.
Henry Morton Stanley.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, here's where I was going with that. Is Richard Stanley's a direct descendant of that guy?
Oh, that's fucking wild.
It is. And
I am
I'm
so
on
sorry
Henry...
to go on a Paul Voulet ramble.
Oh, it's all good. It's
Oh
all
my
good.
God.
Go to Henry Morton Stanley's Wikipedia page. Look at the picture of this dude. He looks like Richard Stanley. It's
And
basically
he's
Richard.
a direct descendant.
He's a direct descendant. It looks like if Richard Stanley was like an explorer of Africa. You know, he's got the hat. He's got the whole colonial explorer hat and everything. It's wild.
That is like pretty wild.
But anyway, all of that aside, very influential sci-fi book. We'll just break down the synopsis. But this guy gets shipwrecked on this island. He finds out, oh, there's like this guy living as a god on this island, and he is doing these experiments where he's injecting human DNA into these animals and creating these human-animal hybrids
Which is not how it works, but
who all call him father and worship him as a god. And then about halfway through the book, they get out of his control and like kill him and take over the island, and then the whole island just descends into
the
Lord
Puma
of the
woman
Flies.
fucking kills him
Yep.
in the book.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, there's no Puma woman in the movie, arguably. Sort of, not 100%.
There's a few cat people.
I think
maybe-
I have read the book.
Okay.
It's coming back now.
It's coming back. I have not. I have not. But that's the premise, right? And Richard Stanley. So there have been a few adaptations. The first one was in 1932, The Island of Lost Souls,
Mm-hmm.
which apparently 14 states banned this original adaptation because of its promotion of the theory of evolution and Dr. Moreau suggesting that he knew what it was like to be a god. So that's kind of
not
controversial.
surprising. I bet I could guess the states.
Sure. The same ones that still don't believe in evolution.
Yeah. Go ahead and start with Alabama, Mississippi, Florida.
I'm
South
sure our listeners in those
Carolina.
states, you know.
I mean, they can't. I mean, unless they're directly responsible for their state's education curriculum, I don't think they should take offense to that.
Correct.
That's my hard line.
I mean, we're from the South, so. I mean,
Hell yeah, we're from the
we get
South,
it.
brother. Hell yes, brother.
Yeah, brother.
Woo! 3 for Dale.
In that film, here's a nice little trivial nugget for you.
Okay.
We got Bela Lugosi as the Sayer of Law. Do you remember who he was? The hyena guy in the new one.
Yep.
And I noticed this in the new film too, but they tweaked it a little bit. But he keeps saying, "Are we not men?" Which was a huge inspiration for Mark Mothersbaugh and Devo, and they named one of their albums after that because they loved this film.
That's also from the book.
Yeah, sure.
That's
I
like the
believe that.
laws. The like after every law they say like, "Are we not men?"
Yes, it
How am
is
I
from the
remembering
book
this?
as well.
What the fuck? Anyways,
Bringing back some old memories.
yeah, that.
Those
syrupy
brain
liquor
cells
is
are
doing me
still
good,
alive. They're coming back to life.
bit by bit.
Then there was an adaptation in the 70s with Burt Lancaster as Dr. Moreau. And that's the one Richard Stanley saw as a kid and was really disappointed. And it kind of like planted the seed of maybe one day doing a better one.
And Richard Stanley had great success before this film as an indie director. He did a movie called Hardware that's supposed to be very, very good. I haven't seen it, regrettably. Actually,
I've seen it. It's up your alley for sure.
I'm sure it is. And I watched Cherry 2000 the other day, and I was like, I should be watching fucking Hardware probably. Cherry 2000 though, also a soon-to-be far-out flick classic.
What 2000?
Cherry 2000.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Ooh, it's on Amazon Prime right now, and it's sweet. Let me tell you, brother, it is sweet.
Nice.
Yeah.
Heck yeah,
It-
can't wait.
But so he done Hardware, which is like now pretty much considered a cult classic.
Yeah, low budget indie film, super cool, very
Dystopian.
different for its time aesthetically.
It was dystopian before dystopian was like as cool as it is now, or was like over the last decade.
Then off the success of that, he ended up working with Miramax and making this film called Dust Devil, which I have not seen, but
I
I
haven't
would
seen
like
that
to
one
watch.
either.
And now his most recent film is The Color Out of Space, right?
Which I have seen and is fucking awesome. Totally far out flicks worthy. It might do that one. We might. I don't know. That might be a Patreon exclusive. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll get there. But yeah, so he'd always wanted to do a Dr. Moreau film. He wrote this script for it that basically everyone who read it was like, this is brilliant. And I'd love to see what his vision was for it, because that script has nothing to do with the final product of the film.
No, he was, as we mentioned earlier, deposed from the film, and there's a lot of things that we could point to the reason for it.
Basically, the story of this movie is just the story of an absolute disaster from start to finish, and it's amazing that it ever even got made. And there's more drama in the behind-the-scenes stuff than there is in the film itself.
I guess let's do a cast call real fast for
Sure.
all of the pertinent peeps.
The casting of this is a story in itself, but originally Richard Stanley wanted Jürgen Prochnow, who's a German actor, to play the part of Moreau, and he's in Dune, In the Mouth of Madness, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Very far out guy.
Ooh, so David Lynch liked this guy.
Yes, he did like. I think a lot
And
of
maybe
people
Richard
liked this
Stanley
guy.
was onto something there. you
No,
know?
he definitely was onto something. This guy's the man, Jürgen Prochnow. But when he couldn't secure that guy, the studio ended up bringing in Marlon Brando, which was an amazing choice. The second they got Marlon Brando, it upped the budget, like, 8 times more than what it originally was going to be.
The budget wasn't, the original budget wasn't even going to cover Marlon Brando. So,
So immediately the
I bet
studio...
Brando always took gross, dude. I bet he always took a cut of the gross.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, Brando was infamously like hated acting and the film industry, kind of, and was like also just a giant pain in the ass. And this was coming right off the heels of this film Don Juan DeMarco. Have you seen that?
I have not.
That's an amazing film that kind of just got brushed under the rug, but it's Marlon Brando plays a therapist, and the patient he's treating is played by Johnny Depp, and he thinks he's Don Juan.
Ah.
And so the whole film, he's trying to convince him that he's not Don Juan. But by the end of the film, spoiler alert, Johnny Depp convinces Marlon Brando that he's also Don Juan, and they both just become Don Juans. And Marlon Brando slowly goes in his own fantasy world where he's Don Juan.
Man, hearing that makes me feel like Terry Gilliam fucking ripped that off when he did The Man Who Killed Don Quixote just a little bit.
Probably a little bit,
Yeah. Check out that episode, listeners. It is our least listened to episode of all time. It needs it needs some listens. It would make us feel better. I don't think either of us were like totally jazzed about that. So maybe don't
No,
listen
it was
to
a long movie.
It was a long fucking movie. It's
Didn't
on
quite
Hulu.
live up to the 30-year hype. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
dude, anything that takes like more than a decade to fucking actually like get greenlit and out the door. Like I just think of like Duke Nukem Forever and just how unbelievably disappointing that game was, and the fact that I like paid $110 for the Balls of Steel edition. I had the collector box for that fucking game, and it was just like borderline unplayable.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's. I will remember it for forever, and like it's sad because I loved Duke Nukem as a child.
So going back to
Yeah.
okay, here's a little tie-in for it. Yeah.
All right.
Once they brought in Marlon Brando, the studio immediately was like, "All right, this is a big budget film. We're gonna use Richard Stanley's script, but we need like a well-known director who can like handle this huge budget project with this massive crew." So they immediately were like, "Richard Stanley, you're out. Roman Polanski's gonna direct this film." Almost immediately. And Richard Stanley was like, getting kicked out of his own passion project, basically. Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yes. Yes.
It's unfortunate.
It
So
is. It'd drive a person insane.
exactly. Well, in a desperate plea to like get back on his own film, he demanded a meeting with Brando, one meeting, to see if he could convince him, because he knew Brando would always get his way, essentially, because he's the biggest movie star ever. And basically, he met with him at his house. And here's a really weird story, because when he was meeting with him, this is all in the documentary. It gets real far out and weird. But I guess Richard Stanley had a friend who was like a witchcraft practitioner, a warlock named Skip in London. And Skip the Warlock, he had him do a magical ritual right at the same time he was meeting with Brando to like make sure this went off without a hitch. Where apparently Skip cut his arm and drew blood and drew a magical sigil right when he was like approaching Brando. And then him and Brando had a heart-to-heart. Basically told him the whole story of H.G. Wells and Joseph Conrad and his ancestor and all the weird synchronicities there. And that's what ended up convincing Marlon Brando to allow Richard Stanley. Basically, Marlon Brando went to the studio and said, "I'm not doing this unless Richard Stanley directs it." So Marlon Brando became his advocate and essentially like his protector against the studio.
For now.
For now. Well, it's interesting because, again, going back to what you said about like his daughter's suicide, he ended up being late for the filming, which he might have been late anyway. He did whatever the fuck he wanted, basically. But Richard Stanley actually got kicked off the film before Marlon Brando ever showed up on set in Queensland, Australia. So with Marlon Brando on board, he next got Bruce Willis on as the lead and James Wood as Montgomery. So Bruce Willis was going to be Douglas, the castaway. James Wood as Montgomery, Dr. Moreau's sidekick. Well, Bruce Willis ended up being served divorce papers from Demi Moore. So he said because of his divorce trial that was going on, he couldn't leave the country. And then James Woods dropped out. At that time, Val Kilmer was originally going to play the part of Douglas, the castaway. But Val Kilmer was kind of hot off the heels of Batman. So he was just making all the demands he wanted. He said, I don't want to be in this movie. It looks stupid to me. I'll only do it if I have 40% less shooting days for my scenes. So he kind of like forced himself to be put in the role of Montgomery. That was not the role they intended for him. But I thought he actually does well as Montgomery.
I think that he played it well given the direction that he was getting at that point,
And he's kind of an asshole, and the character was an asshole.
He nailed it.
Another like weird thing that kind of ties it in with Apocalypse Now. The New Line Cinema brought in this screenwriter, Michael Herr. And if that sounds familiar, he wrote this Vietnam War book called Dispatches, which is awesome. I've read it. It's like it's an early example of like gonzo journalism. He was like boots on the ground in Vietnam, wrote about it exactly how it happened in this book Dispatches. And this book Dispatches is the other like primary source of inspiration for Apocalypse Now, Platoon. Basically every Vietnam War movie is inspired by this book Dispatches, which is interesting because they brought him in, and one of his main influences was like rewriting the character of Montgomery to be like this acid washed, like war veteran dude. Which you can kind of see that. Val Kilmer has like a little Apocalypse Now edge to him.
I mean, they're literally giving drugs out to the beast people.
Pretty fun.
It is pretty fun.
So after Val Kilmer switched to the other role, they brought in, what's his name? David Thewlis?
Yep.
David Thewlis, who is kind of, would you call him the antagonist of Sandman?
I think it's Thewlis.
Thewlis? That makes sense.
He's the protagonist of this, I would say.
I was talking about the Sandman.
Oh, one of.
He's one of.
Kind of almost like a neutral character, right? Like somebody.
He has good intentions.
Yeah, I mean, he's afflicted with something without spoiling anything for anybody. Most of our viewers will probably remember him as Remus in the Harry Potter movies.
Yes, and also he's in a lot of Charlie Kaufman films, so he's he's in some stuff.
Yeah, he's acclaimed.
And I thought he was fantastic. I honestly thought his performance for like being the last person cast into this film and like not a name at all.
I mean, he'd been in some stuff.
I mean, at that time, right?
Well, I mean, his filmography goes back to the 80s.
Oh, okay. Well, he wasn't a big leading man. He was no James Woods or Val Kilmer or Marlon Brando.
Or Bruce Willis, sure.
Or Bruce Willis. He does an excellent job. In fact, I felt like his performance was one of the most like sincere out of all of them in this movie.
I would agree to that. Fairuza Balk.
Fairuza Balk, our favorite witchy, kind of sexy witch
my
woman.
My original goth girl crush.
Oh, she was so good back then.
Oh man,
she was a little bit scary in The Craft. That's when I questioned my goth girl crush.
And they made her an anime cat girl in this film. She is a cat-themed hybrid. Every neckbeard's wettest dream. Anime cat girl.
Hey, that's my wettest dream.
Yeah.
I'd put on a furry costume and go to town on that.
Well, she might not be into the furry thing. You're not being very considerate of the anime cat girl's wants and wishes.
That's a good point.
But she's Moreau's daughter. She's Moreau's daughter. She is a cat girl. She is way less grotesque than all of the other man beasts.
That's true, but the original... Here's a fun nugget for you. The original idea that Richard Stanley had for her was that she was going to have pubic hair, like another fun idea of his that the studio vetoed, but she was going to have like pubic hair like going up her abdomen and down her legs. And then in the scene where she like gets with David Thewlis, they were going to kiss or whatever. He was going to like expose her nipple, and then she would then like go down her body. Another set of nipples, and then more nipples. And the studio decided that would upset people.
and right they were, Ken. I mean, I would want to watch that. That sounds exciting.
Right up our alley, right?
Yeah.
More nipples are always a good thing, as we learned in Total Recall.
Yeah, I mean, well, is there...
And Mallrats.
You hit critical nipples at a certain number?
I mean, just... I don't... That's
what if it's 1,000 nipples? What if the body's just covered in nipples?
I mean, if they're all yours, then that's great. But if you have to share them with 999 other people, then...
You're just a giant nipple man.
You're all suckling at the same time.
Would you rather have dick-shaped nipples?
Oh.
Or would you rather have a nipple-shaped and sized dick?
Oh, I'm going dick-shaped nipples all day long.
Yeah, you can cut those bad boys off, right?
That's easy.
That's an easy one. Easy choice.
Just pin them to the side or something so they don't like poke through their shirt.
Don't pin them. What if they get hard like a dick? I don't know. Sorry to bring our podcast to this level, but
the mind of Andrew.
Yeah, I had to ask. It popped into my head.
So basically, like, now we've got the cast. Pretty like all-star cast, all-star 90s cast going, you know?
Yep, looking good.
Looking good. Val Kilmer was like the biggest movie star there was at that time. Almost right away, Richard Stanley just seemed like he was in over his head and like started kind of withdrawing, becoming more reclusive. He kind of had like a mental breakdown while he was in LA, and they were like, all right, we're going to send him to Australia early. He can relax, kind of work on storyboards, get things set up. And then he just like stopped going to production meetings. I think he was kind of had a mental breakdown essentially before filming even started, which was not boding well. It sounded like everyone was kind of concerned.
Very reminiscent of Tropic Thunder.
Yes, same idea. And then once all of the big stars got on set, they were all just being kind of like, especially Val Kilmer, just sounds, I know he tells his own side of the story.
A lot of other people tell a different story.
Yeah, everyone says he was basically just a fucking dick.
How do you deal with a spoiled actor, Braden?
It's a good question.
You bend him over and you spank that ass.
That's from Tropic Thunder, right?
Yeah, it is.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not going well. This is way before, you know, they're waiting for Marlon Brando to show up, right? Then, while all this is happening, there was a giant hurricane, which you have alluded to, which like destroyed everything.
I love a hurricane.
They made some like horrible choices by putting the set in the middle of the jungle, like an hour away from the hotel. So like the schedule, everything was going wrong. The scheduling wasn't good. Val Kilmer was just being a pain in the ass. And at the end of the day, Val Kilmer had all the power because the studio was relying on him being part of this film to have any hope of making their money back. So basically, this is one of the funnest stories. Richard Stanley had a total like mental breakdown on set, which that's not that funny, but he ended up climbing up a tree at the end of shooting day and wouldn't come down.
Which, you know, we've all been there, right? You just want to get away high above all the ground walkers.
Amongst the coconuts.
Amongst the coconuts.
But yeah, so he was replaced just 4 days into filming. He was replaced with John Frankenheimer, who was like a hard-ass old-school director who also just didn't want to be there. Had made some insane deal with the studio.
Yeah, got a fucking mint from it.
And he came in and was just, you know, being a hard ass to everyone, which I think in that situation, I mean, this was his reputation as well, but I think coming into like a set with no discipline like that, you almost have to, you know, set that precedent from day one. So I'm not going to say he did the wrong thing. This film almost didn't get made, and he somehow, like, for better or for worse, got it made.
Yeah, he got it across the finish line. He's the corporate man, the company man they brought in to, like, fucking right the ship. And, you know, it doesn't have to win an Oscar, but we got to at least get it into the theaters.
So, Marlon Brando finally shows up, like, a week or two late. And he has all his own ideas that he brings to the set with him that he hasn't told anyone about. But he totally wants to redesign his character. He wants to wear all white makeup, which some people have speculated that it's so that his stand-in could like shoot more of the film. Mm-hmm. And then he like wanted to like put all this lace like covering his face. And yes, he took a liking to the world's smallest man, Nelson de la Rosa, who I want to say he was 2'4", which
is very tiny.
That is very, very small. And he decided, I want, like, his sidekick was intended to be this German actor who plays Maling. Well, he said, no, I want Nelson de la Rosa to be in every scene with me. Every single scene. And I'm going to dress him exactly like me, and he's going to be my mini-me, which is brilliant and possibly like the most iconic, lasting thing to come out of this movie, right?
Yeah.
And then there's that, one of the best scenes of the film is when he's playing piano and Nelson De La Rosa is playing the little tiny piano on top of the piano.
I did love that scene. It's like one of the best shot scenes of the whole film.
It's one of the best scenes of any movie. It's so good. It's so good. Now, Nelson De La Rosa, he had no acting experience, spoke only Spanish, not a word of English, and apparently was like kind of a wild character. So there's all these beast people on this island, these people who are in these, beast makeup. There's a pig lady, a hyena man, dog people, a cat, some cat people. Well, Nelson De La Rosa, all these beast people, they were extras who were they were supposed to be there for 6 weeks. They ended up being there for like almost a year or whatever. And they were getting this massive per diem. So they were just partying every single night, doing drugs. And they hired like all these actual hippies who had dreadlocks and stuff to be these beast extras. So every night was a giant party, and they would party with this little guy, Nelson De La Rosa. And they were interviewing the lady who played the pig lady, and apparently, like, he one day he was saying some things, and his sister was translating. And the pig lady was like, "What's he saying?" And the sister was like, "No, you don't want to know." She was like, "No, I want to know." And she was like, "He's asking you to go back to his room with him so he can, like, have sex with you." So he propositioned the mini-me proposition, the pig lady.
You got to swing. You miss every shot you don't take or something.
And I mean, you just watched this, so you know what the pig lady looked like.
Indeed.
She has like massive, like, sets of drooping tits.
I mean,
she's kind of horrific.
All prosthetics, to be clear.
She's horrific looking.
In real life, she's actually not that bad looking.
But yeah, they like showed videos.
They do make her look hideous in the film.
No, you're right. She looks fine.
She looks fine.
They showed them all dancing at the club, and he's like on the dance floor, like breaking it down. And she said he was very sexual.
Just also as a final kind of cast note regarding the deposing of Richard Stanley, Fairuza. I mean, lots of people were upset when he was removed. Fairuza made a production assistant drive her, I believe, all the way to Sydney in a rented limousine.
Across the continent.
Literally across the entire continent of Australia.
Which is insane.
If you're not great at geography, not saying that we are, Australia's a big fucking continent. That is like over a day of driving.
Yes. And yeah, all the cast was pretty much on his side. She kind of was a drama queen about it, but at the end of the day, they all had his back. They could see that all these forces were basically conspiring against him and kind of just like picking on him like Val Kilmer was basically bullying this guy.
She was a little bit of a drama queen, but her agent told her in not so minced words that like basically the studio had said like they would destroy her if she broke the contract, which sounds
fair on a multi-million-dollar film. If you just quit in the middle of it, it's not very professional.
It's not, but it's also say you would ruin someone over it when you can just like hire another actress and film more.
That's true. That's a good point. I think people get ruined in Hollywood all the time.
Yeah.
All you have to do is not suck Harvey Weinstein's egg-shaped penis. And it's over.
It is. There it is. It's been a few episodes. Maybe 2.
I think we talk about it every episode.
I don't know if the Northman got slipped in, but who knows?
That's true. Another fun Nelson De La Rosa story, the world's smallest man. At one point, one of the actors, he just was like, "Oh, hey, Nelson, how did your day go?" And he says that Nelson just screamed, "Shut up," and then just punched him right in the nuts.
That's
so like the fact that Marlon Brando took him under his wing, he got more and more bold, and it kind of went to his head too, which is hilarious to me.
That is, I mean, hey, You get a taste of power.
Yeah, you had a lot of power on that set. If Marlon Brando liked you, you had all the power on that set, which is pretty wild. Which Brando hated Val Kilmer, and at one point apparently he had told him not to confuse the size of his paycheck with the amount of talent that he had.
Oh, cutting.
That is cutting. I mean, I'm not gonna disagree that much.
Frankenheimer also hated Val Kilmer. Here's a quote. "I don't like Val Kilmer. I don't like his work ethic, and I don't want to be associated with him ever again." Reportedly, I believe, basically, like, when Val wrapped his last set, he said something on the lines of, like, "Now get that bastard out of here, and I don't ever want to see him again."
That's
or something.
Hilarious.
As soon as his last scene was filmed, Frankenheimer basically kicked him off the set. So, hey, I mean, Val, I hate to say it, but, like, there's a lot of accounts of you kind of being a douchebag.
Not a single person in any account that I read.
I wonder if Frankenheimer ever felt, like, sympathetic towards Richard Stanley. Is this kind of, like, veteran, big name director? It's like, man, like, how could this kind of, like, new guy on the block have ever put up with these personalities,
Another fun quote from Frankenheimer about Val Kilmer. He said, "Even if I was directing a film called The Life of Val Kilmer, I wouldn't have that prick in it."
Frankenheimer, dude, fucking throwing the zingers.
Frankenheimer is kind of fun. He's just an old school hard ass. He's like your mean grandpa who just, like, doesn't tolerate any bullshit. Which, I mean, it kind of turns out that's what they needed, for the film. Another fun Marlon Brando story. So he would just come up with all sorts of crazy requests. It's basically, there, by multiple accounts, Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer were just there to ruin the movie. But Marlon Brando, at one point, he requests to stop production so that they could rewrite the script for 6 to 8 weeks. Basically postpone all of the filming because he wanted there to be a twist at the end where he takes off his hat and he's a dolphin man. Which is just, it
doesn't make any sense at all with the rest of the film, but that would have been awesome.
I mean, he made it very clear. I mean, by his own telling, he hadn't read the script, didn't care, didn't read the book, knew nothing about the movie, didn't bother to memorize his lines. They were being fed to him through an earpiece, the ones that he didn't just improvise.
It's major BDE, man.
He did not give a fuck. And I mean, why should he, And I mean, this was surely one of Marlon Brando's last films, right?
Yes, it might have even been his last film. Which is,
I feel like I would have come across that tidbit, but let's find out.
Let's do a double check.
He did 3 more after this. He did The Score, which, okay, I actually was familiar with that one. He did a few more, but this was one of his last ones. But yeah, so at a certain point, now here's another just kind of one of the more final crazy facts I have.
All right.
But at a certain point, they found out Richard Stanley, he was supposed to go back to his fucking country after he got kicked off the film, right? Well, he had never actually left Australia. He just started living on a fruit orchard a few hours away and was just smoking massive amounts of weed and just, like, complaining about getting kicked off the movie.
He was recovering.
That's what you call it.
Yeah. I wish I could recover from... Anyways, I mean, isn't it, like, rumored that he was actually snuck in as an extra?
It's not a rumor. It's a true fact. It's hard
fact, right?
He ran into some crew members who were like, who brought him back to... I mean, this sounds like just an idea. Every story about him after he got kicked off involves, like, a giant joint, because apparently that's what he was into. But This sounds just like such a stoner idea. They're like, yeah, man, let's go back to the set. You can sneak onto the set and be a beast man, and no one will know it's you. Well, he did sneak onto the set and wore a dog mask, and is in the film as an extra beast person, and no one knew.
Is he credited?
He is not credited, but he's in the movie. Like, you can see him, and he has a very particular mask. Well, I guess rumors eventually got around that he was secretly on set with the intention of sabotaging the film. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, he said he was never going to make another film again. Hated Hollywood. He said that Marlon Brando warned him the whole industry was just hyenas. And just to get out now and make a better life for himself, essentially, which...
Very pointed advice from a man who was at the top of the fucking Hollywood pyramid. I don't think he's wrong.
No, it sounds, like a
sounds like good
game.
advice.
I wouldn't like that. I mean, ultimately in the 2000s, he did come back and he wrote a few more films, but he didn't direct anymore until 2019's Color Out of Space. So I think, he was over it. He was totally over it.
And I appreciate like the old man advice there.
Love it when I get
you
some
should
old
listen
man
to the
advice.
old people in your life. They've lived some shit.
I wish some old podcaster would just be like, "Get out now, get out now before you start hawking me undies. Just get out now."
Oh man. Yeah,
You're
our Bomba socks fucking overlords will be juicing every drop of talent and joy that we have in our being into the podcast.
Right. They're not going to let us talk about what we want because it doesn't represent the MeUndies brand.
And that's how it goes, Right now, though, I mean, we are like probably asking for a cease and desist from both those entities.
That's fine.
Yeah, we got it in once, If you want to pay us to advertise, though, I mean, hey, we can talk.
But
we can wheel and deal.
Island of Dr. Moreau, folks. The documentary. Go watch the documentary. Lost Soul: The Doomed Journey.
Then
of
watch
Richard
the film as a
Stanley.
companion piece.
I mean, that's literally how I would recommend to do it.
That's what we fucking did an episode on.
And
a movie that's a companion piece to a documentary.
Pretty
about
much.
making
We
the
might as
movie.
well call the episode Lost Soul.
Out. That's kind of far out, but
It's far out. I mean,
this fucking movie.
that documentary was one of the original inspirations for even just doing like a behind the scenes like film podcast thing, which is... And it's directed by David Gregory, by the way, who apparently, I learned this week, has also done a documentary in the same style about the really disastrously bad Super Mario Brothers movie, which
we've also teased doing as a far out flick.
Have you seen that one?
No, because I've
So
heard
this
it's
is
awful.
another one that Andrew's gonna hate, and he's gonna be like, "Why am I watching this?"
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just be way drunker.
It's
next
got
time.
what's John Leguizamo? What's his name? Is that it? John
That's close enough. It's as good as I'm going to do.
He's
I think
Luigi.
it's Leguizamo. Yeah.
He's Luigi. Dennis Hopper's Bowser.
Well, we
It's
love
fun.
Dennis Hopper.
We love Dennis Hopper. We love him. Another tie-in to Apocalypse Now. He's the villain of that one. Marlon Brando's the villain of this one. Fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, what did you... The movie was bad, right? I mean, when he
The movie's
escapes...
not great.
When Douglas escapes, so we didn't even talk about Douglas, but he's like the straight man of the story, right? Like, he's not doing any of the wacky antics. He's like a serious actor.
He's also supposed to be a UN agent. So yeah, he's not engaging in the antics.
But even like the actor behind the scenes, like there's no fun stories about him.
Oh yeah, he was just there for the paycheck.
But when his character like escapes and goes to the boats, and there's were those rats CGI?
Yeah, they're like
That was bad.
rat monkeys or something. I
That
don't
was
know.
Whose choice was that? That was terrible.
It sticks out, and I try to assess it for when it was made, and I'm like, okay, well, like, the CGI could look worse. It could be
They could have
worse.
just used, Frank Oz, Jim Henson Muppets, and it would have been way cooler.
Oh yeah, they don't even have to jump around or anything. Like you just have one like pop out a little bit. You know, you can hide the puppeteer under the fucking center console of the boat.
This film came out in, I want to say, 96, right? And yeah,
Correctamundo.
it was right at that time where like films were still using some practical effects and some CGI, and the CGI when it happens in this movie looks terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was like a ugly period where people were doing some CGI and some practical effects, and it's just like
Put side by side, they do. It's you can tell the difference.
either would be just great separate, but like when you put them together, it just like looks funny in the film.
Yeah.
It's not a good look.
Overall, the whole film. I mean, I did like the Beast character designs.
It would have been cooler with Richard Stanley though.
It would have been cooler with Richard Stanley, and at the end of the day, the whole thing kind of just looks like a sci-fi original movie.
Dude, it feels like a fucking old Planet of the Apes film.
It kind of does.
It's like if you smashed Apocalypse Now and Planet of the Apes together, this is the output.
Interesting. I definitely like both of those parts more than the sum of the parts.
Yes, agreed.
Planet of the Apes, honestly, I could do a Planet of the Apes one.
We should just do like a fucking Patreon special and make it like 4 hours and we can just talk about the
All of them?
entire. Yeah, just do it all in one.
One of them is Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and there's these subterranean mutants. I
Ooh,
want to say that's the third one. It's
I
pretty
haven't
fun.
seen that one. Sweet.
Subterranean mutants, bro.
Have you seen all the new ones?
Many of them, but I'm not a big Marky Mark fan. Like, I just
Dude,
don't.
what the fuck are you talking about? That's one fucking movie from like the mid 2000s.
Not a big. Well, that's the one I didn't watch.
Mm.
Not a big Marky Mark.
Oh man, yeah. No, there's been like a whole maybe trilogy or more.
I liked the one where the girl ape looked like Michael Jackson. I
That's
know
the
you
same. That's the same fucking one as the
know.
Mark
No,
Wahlberg
it's
one.
not. That's the Tim Burton one. Is that the same one? Maybe
Dude,
that is the
bro,
same
I'm like
one.
99% sure that's the same one.
Let's find out right fucking now. Oh, that is the same one. Well, I liked her
I knew it.
character design.
Yeah, yeah. That's when I first realized that like maybe furries aren't all bad. Just kidding. I saw this way before furries were a thing. Well, some of the new ones with James Franco weren't so bad. I know he's not Hollywood's golden child anymore, but they're not all bad.
I mean, I never was in love with James Franco. He's just okay.
I mean, this is like a serious role for him.
I
you
like
know.
the idea of finding out how it happened. Because isn't that like the premise of those? They're like essentially prequels where you kind of learn how the apes.
Correct. And instead
over.
of
That's a
people
fun
wearing,
premise.
ape costumes, it's like actual monkeys becoming smarter. So it's like early evolution of the future ape man that will rule the planet.
We could see that in this lifetime.
I'm pulling for dolphins or octopi, but yeah, maybe the apes take it. I don't know.
I mean, it was John C. Lilly who actually was an inspiration of Richard Stanley's take on Dr. Moreau, but he was the one who was like injecting dolphins with LSD and all this crazy stuff in the 60s.
And like one of his researchers was having sex with him or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
And
can't forget that little nugget. That one's seared into the brain.
her main goal was to teach the dolphins human language.
So she let them fuck her.
And well, yeah. She thought it was horny and it couldn't focus because it was too horny, which I wish I'd had a hot teacher who had that philosophy.
Yeah, it's like,
Even though that would have been probably classified as rape, but
surely this is why Braden can't stay focused in class.
But he popularized the idea of how smart dolphins are, and yes, they do have large brains, but I'm not buying it. I'm going on record. I'm saying, not buying it, man.
They do smart things. I know that's like a joke in
Kind
the
of.
Life Aquatic that like fucking Steve Zissou hates those fucking dolphins because they don't do anything right.
I don't see it. I mean, I get it. They're pretty smart, but I don't see I see no evidence that they're smarter than a dog, which they probably have a common ancestor with.
I mean, I bet they're like pretty similar to dogs. I think
That's what I'm
dogs are
saying.
smarter than people think.
I think dogs are. Why aren't we talking about how smart dogs are? What's this obsession with dolphins?
Because they are subservient to us, masters the man.
I don't know. They seem to hump people to death every year.
Yeah, and some people. Well, there's really not that many people who get killed by dogs per year. I looked it up, and it's like under 300 a year in the U.S.
In the U.S., where
that's
we
like
don't.
Nothing, dude. That's.
I know, but we'd also have less.
It's like a millionth of a percentage point.
We have less packs of roving feral dogs in the U.S.
It's 100,000th of a percentage point.
In Bowman, South Carolina, there's quite a few. But in general, we have less packs of roving feral dogs than in many countries.
This is true.
That's when they get you. You took one dog off the street. One less person has to die at the teeth of Sassy.
Oh, you're talking talking about my wild dog.
Yep. Took her from her pack. All right, folks. This is Far Out Flicks. Do the Facebook stuff. Email us.
Do the Instagram stuff. Nobody fucking likes us on Instagram, and that's like
true. The
Instagram's
Instagram's
social
a little
platform
sad.
of the future. We need
Far
more
Out
followers.
Flicks podcast. Find it. It's kind of.
I mean, it's going to be the same memes, but we would love the
content,
support.
But whatever.
As always, tell a friend, like, subscribe, fucking leave a comment, send us an email, engage.
And we've been at it. We took last week off. I think we're going to take next week off too. We need to reset, folks. We need our summer vacation too.
Yeah. And really the plan, I think, in my mind at least, was to take 2 weeks off, but we didn't announce it. So we're like, oh, we better do an episode so we can like tell them we're actually going to take a week off. So you guys don't think that we finally succumbed to the pressures, the intense form of diamond like pressure of the podcasting.
Our lack of a MeUndies sponsorship. But
we're just gonna have to.
I don't know why MeUndies is just so funny.
Or something else.
We're coming back in 2 weeks. Season 4. We're bringing it. We're bringing it.
Real Patreon content.
It's all coming. It's all coming.
We hope you guys loved season 3. This was like a real doubling down of efforts. For our long-term listeners, obviously you know that, or even our new-term listeners who made the mistake of starting at the start of the catalog.
Yeah, if you go back, it's rough. I listened to an old episode recently, and I was like, man, what the fuck? I'm never doing this again, first of all, and what the fuck were we thinking?
Yeah, it was not as good as it is now.
It's okay.
Or, I don't know. If you guys
fun.
think our old stuff's better, let us know.
We were just hammered.
We'll ham up the classics.
I'm sure we said some funny shit because we were just drunk.
We did. We had to cut a lot of it out back then. Brandon had like 4 times the editing job that he has now.
Well, I also, sometimes I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to listen to this episode. I'm just going to, there were times when.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. Oh,
Who knows what's out there? Who knows?
Oh my gosh.
If you're part of HR,
I don't feel so good. What? What?
What? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Go listen to all those old ones. Help us out, folks. Email us with the timestamp of the terrible things
what you
that
want
we need
excised from the episode.
Right. I'm sure they're.
That would actually make me really sad if that's like our biggest influx of fan email is like people telling us all the shit that they hate about season 1.
Anyway, thanks for sticking with us, Flickers. We'll be back in 2 weeks. This was a long one. We'll be back in 2 weeks with something good.
It's a long one I fucking didn't even want to do.
We had fun.
We had fun. It was fun. It's fun as always. Thanks, Flicks. Flickers. Flicks. Flick Flicks.
Flick Flicks.
Flick Flicks.